It's hard to innovate if you can't test your ideas, which is why the new testing equipment at the Tech Belt Energy Innovation Center in Warren is so important to the incubator and its startups, both current and future.
We're hoping and looking at engineering teams from companies all around Northeast Ohio and the Mahoning Valley being able to locate here and really help their companies innovate and grow.
Rick Stockberger is Vice President and Chief Operating Officer of TBEIC. He says the time spent getting the lab ready for companies was worth the wait.
This space has really come together over the last couple of years to be a really great space for entrepreneurs, but also for established companies to be able to come in, do your testing, do your bench testing, as well as be able to understand a little bit more about IoT and test your new devices for that. So it's much like a co-working space, but focused on lab production.
The new equipment is the result of $500,000 in grants from the Appalachian Regional Commission and the Ohio Board of Regents and has a variety of uses. Chief Technical Officer Bill Wittenberger explains what the wet lab will be used for.
This is the kind of place where you would make small battery samples or small fuel cell samples or something like that starts out with chemistry and ends up with a little piece of something that you might test. So that's what you would do in a wet lab here.
The next step in the testing process would be the battery test lab. Entrepreneur in residence Chris Mather explains.
We can test everything from small cells up to large cells and even large banks of cells that you might use in a grid level storage kind of application. And we can test them for reliability, resiliency, energy density, things like that.
In addition to testing batteries, Mather says the lab equipment is capable of simulating a power grid so users can monitor the effects of putting renewable energy, such as wind or solar, back onto the grid. The lab also has a space dedicated to IoT, or Internet of Things. TBEIC's executive in residence and program advisor David Nestick gives us an example.
We work a lot with the utility industries, and utilities are out communicating with appliances that are connected to the utility grid. They have specific communication protocols to do things like monitoring hot water tanks or air conditioning units or thermostats in your home or dishwashers or anything like that. If a manufacturer wants to make something, a sensor that communicates with the utility industry via the internet, then they have to meet certain standards, to do that communication and control.
With the new equipment installed, companies can now begin testing in the shared resource lab without any major investment.
Someone could come here and know that they can rent space in our lab and they have access to equipment that in a lot of cases they just couldn't afford or wouldn't make sense for them to use their capital equipment on.
If industry wants to really innovate and industry wants to grow, they need to be touching these startups and understanding that this is where new ideas are coming from. They're coming from places like TBEIC and they're coming from our startups.